When I went to Machu Picchu, I expected to be amazed. I was, but not just by the ruins. I was amazed by how many people stand in front of something obvious and refuse to trust their own eyes. Because at Machu Picchu, there are clearly two different types of construction. One is smooth, massive, precise, fitted, almost seamless. The other is rough, layered, unpolished, and filled with what looks like dirt mortar. And the explanation everyone repeats is, the nicer buildings were for the elites. Are you kidding me? Welcome back to Ancient Stone Secret. This channel is not about believing every wild theory. It is about something much simpler. Actually looking. Because sometimes the mystery is not hidden underground. Sometimes it is right in front of your face. And the real question is not what were we told. The real question is, does the explanation match what we can see? Today, I want to talk about Machu Picchu, Cusco, Ollantaytambo, Marcel Faudi's neutron theory, and a backyard experiment that changed how I look at ancient stone forever. Walk through Machu Picchu and you see it immediately. There are walls made of huge, smooth stones. They fit together without visible mortar, the seams are tight, the blocks are irregular, but somehow perfect. Some have strange knobs or bosses. Some look like slightly shifted, like earthquakes moved them, but the wall survived. Then nearby, sometimes very nearby, you see totally different construction. Small stones, rough stones, layered stones, walls that look more like ordinary living quarters. Some gaps are filled. Some surfaces look unfinished. Some walls look like they were built with available rock and dirt. Now the guidebook answer is, fine masonry was used for elite, sacred, or royal buildings. Rougher masonry was used for ordinary structures. Fine, that may explain social status, but it does not explain the technological gap. Because here is the obvious problem. If you know how to build a smooth, earthquake-resistant, no-mortar wall out of massive stones, why would you ever go back to stacking rough rocks with dirt between them? Think about our world. We do not live in huts next to Trump Tower because that building is for elites. Yes, rich people get nicer buildings, they get marble, they get better views, they get better finishes, but the core technology is the same. Concrete, steel, rebar, glass, plumbing, electrical, elevators. Modern buildings may differ in quality, but they belong to the same technological world. We do not say, this billionaire gets earthquake-proof concrete, but the normal people get stacked mud rocks. This is not how technology works. Once a society has a superior structural method, especially one that survives earthquakes, that method spreads. Maybe not everywhere instantly, maybe not equally, but it does not sit there side by side looking like a different civilization built it. Saying the obvious things out loud here. So when I hear the smooth walls were for elites, I do not hear an explanation, I hear a label, and labels are not answers. A tour guide can memorize a story. A textbook can compress uncertainty into one sentence. A museum plate can make a theory sound like fact. But the wall is still the wall. And the wall is telling you something. It is saying, look closer. There is more than one building method here. There is more than one story here. Are you allowed to notice it? You do not have to be rude. You do not have to be anti-history. You do not have to believe in aliens. You just have to say, wait, does that explanation actually make sense? That is where real investigation begins. And this is not only in Machu Picchu. Look at Cusco. The famous 12-angled stone sits in the old Inca wall on Hatun Remioc Street. That wall was part of an older Inca structure. Then later, colonial-era builders built on top of it and around it. Why? Because that is what humans do. We inherit strong foundations, we reuse them, we build our era on top of the last era. No mystery, no complicated theory. If you find an old wall that is stronger than anything you can make, you do not destroy it, you use it. We do this now. They did it then. So when we see refined megalithic walls below and a rougher or later looking construction above or beside it, we should at least ask, are we looking at one continuous building phase or are we looking at reuse? Did later people inherit older stonework and build around it? That is not crazy, that is normal. The question is not whether the Inca were brilliant. It's not. Of course they were brilliant. The question is not whether ancient people could engineer incredible things. Of course they could. The question is, does the official method fully explain what we see? We are told they quarried the stone, moved the stone, pounded the stone, shaped the stone, tested the fit, adjusted it, polished it, repeated this again and again and again. Maybe. But standing there, looking at those seams, those soft-looking curves, those strange knobs, those blocks that seem almost formed into place, I started wondering if we are asking the wrong question. Maybe the question is not only how did they cut hard stone? Maybe the question is, did they have a way to make stone easier to shape? This brings me to Marcel Foti. I do not agree with him on everything. By the way, please go check out his channel on YouTube. You can find it if you Google Marcel Foti. I'll try to link it here as well. I think applying one theory to every ancient site in the world is dangerous. So that's where I perhaps don't agree with him. Egyptian sculptures, for example, are a different problem. Different stone, different evidence, different artistic tradition. One theory should not be stretched until it explains everything, right? It might not. But you shouldn't throw away baby with the bathwater. Machu Picchu, for the gray, sandy, molded-looking megaliths, for the weird seams, for the nubs, for the possibility of stones shaped in place, Marcel Foti's Natron theory fits better than people want to admit. The basic idea is simple. Maybe some ancient stones were not carved in the way we imagine. Maybe some were made, repaired, softened, cast, coated, or shaped using mineral chemistry. Not magic, not aliens, chemistry. Stone, powder, ash, alkaline materials, binders, heat, water, time. There is a chemical process that can make this. And Marcel proved it. Ancient people were not stupid. They knew fire, they knew ash, they knew minerals, they knew that materials transform. They made ceramics, they made pigments, plaster, you name it. So why is it impossible that they experimented with artificial stone-like material? We have cement today. This strong stone can be achieved through different recipes. So I tried something out myself. Not as proof, not as archaeology, just as an experiment. And important note, this is not a tutorial. Do not mess around with alkaline materials without proper protection. Use eye protection, gloves, ventilation, and common sense. I mixed water glass with wood ash, inspired by Marcel's early recipe. And what happened shocked me. First, the material I got had the same basic look and feel that I remembered from Machu Picchu's megaliths. Gray, sandy, stone-like, not concrete in the modern sense. Cannot name it geopolymer, not gonna do that. The geopolymer community just comes at you saying it's not geopolymer. That's because people like me, who doesn't know geopolymer, uses a term that means something completely different. So don't call it that, right? Let's call it ancient concrete. I don't know, like mixing goo that solidifies into stone. So, where did I get the materials? The water glass you can buy on Amazon. That's where I got mine. And the wood ash came from my fireplace from the winter months where I luckily hadn't cleared the fireplace yet. So I mixed the two and I combined it and it became kind of like a batter for, I don't know, like pancakes. You can add more ash and then it's more moldable. So I had one problem. I didn't have too much outcome of this material, right? And I wanted to do something like a miniature Machu Picchu wall. So here's an interesting thing that came out of it, like a learning. What did my mind think of? Oh, I will get some rocks and I will coat them in this Play-Doh-like goo. So I picked up some river rocks that were just used for, landscaping in my backyard, and I coated them. Right? You can see it here. They're inside. And the outside, and then I just stacked them one on top of the other like a miniature wall. Then I took like a scalpel, like a knife, a stick, and I drew the seams. And so this is what it came out. So yes, it took a really long time to make this video. So it's been almost 2 years since I made it. But here is this thing that after 2 years, it looks a little wider. But, look at some of the Machu Picchu walls. They look kind of like light gray, right? So this is what it is like today. I went and I found it in my, shed, and it's there, and it's rock. It's not elephant poop, people. This is rock. Okay, it's very hard. I tried and I boiled this, like the outcome of this recipe, and it holds on boiling, which means it is a rock. Okay, if you boil a rock, it still stays a rock. I boiled it and it still stayed. So it's a rock. Okay, and here you can see I have the rock inside of it, right? So I didn't have too much goo, so I put the rocks inside. This is how it was made. Very interesting learning. So then there is a latent tempo, right? And the latent tempo showed me something that perhaps the ancients had the same thought process. Well, in a latent tempo, this is actually from the footage from Giacomo Longato's history channel on YouTube. Please click it. Very interesting stuff. Lots of recordings he has on it. And so in a later tempo, he showed a structure that is ruined. I haven't been there myself, but it's basically partially ruined, and the edges show that there is a rock sitting inside, like rock spaces, like somebody picked out the rocks or they fell out from old time, which means that the stuff around it was there, and there was a rock inside. Like same thing. Okay, there's not much more to say here. Also from Giacomo Longato's channel, like he actually on X he was posting too. That's where I saw it. He has a recording of a wall, like a very kind of like close cut, and the seams, they go and then they end like right there. It just goes, and it looks like somebody drew it with a stick, which is like also another thing that I did here, right? So when you try to follow the steps one by one, all of a sudden, like a lot of things make a ton of sense. So here's what Marcel discovered on his channel, and you should totally go and watch it. Marcel has discovered that when you alter the recipe, and by the way, he altered the recipe significantly since then, because I'll diverge here, but one of my biggest issues with neutron theory early on was how do people get water glass? Obviously, they can't order it on Amazon, and you can't just melt the kitty litter. I mean, you can today, but back in the days, So the neutron theory had a big gap how to get meaningful amounts of water glass. And Marcel's explanation was that if you put fire on top of a rock with neutron on it, it's going to melt the rock and the silica, that is inside the rock, because the rocks are bound, like if you think of granite, like those little quartz pieces, that basically is what transforms into the water glass, right? But these days, Marcel has perfected the recipe, and turns out if you boil sand, like regular sand, which is like how we get water glass today, like in big industrial plants, like you get really fine, high quality quartz sand, and then you melt it, right? And so neutron works, neutron salt, which is like salt you find. It's a natural material. The salt you add, it drops down the temperature of boiling of the sand. And then if you actually boil the sand not in water, but in alkali, like a lye solution, like Marcel can explain it better than me, I'm gonna butcher it, but if you put that stuff that you're kind of like should be careful protecting your eyes from, like the lye solution, you shouldn't touch it. Like if you heat it up and it starts boiling and the sand starts bubbling, that's how you get the water glass. So like that portion has been solved since. I have not tested it myself because I don't have the pot to waste, and I should probably do it, but it's scary. But if there is a perfect way for ancients to do this. And so, yeah, that is like rolling back. That is Marcel's theory. And so what Marcel has, after he perfected the recipe, what he has also discovered is why there are nubs. These nubs and bosses, like our tour guide was saying, like, yeah, some of these nubs were used so the ancients could put the wood boards on top of it. Yeah, makes sense, right? If you have a second floor, you need something of a shape coming out of the rock where you can rest the wood board on, and that makes total sense. But some of them, but the ones that are for wood boards, they're distinct. They're clearly, maybe like 10 inches out. Like it definitely had a purpose. Some of it was used for doors and whatnot. There is also nubs on the surface of the rock that do not serve a purpose. They're not for lifting the rock. Like it doesn't look any easier. They're not prominent enough. But the nubs are there. And so what Marcel discovered is that some of these recipes that you do when you mold it back into the stone, the water is the byproduct of the chemical reaction, and the water has to seep out. It has to leave the mixture, right, for the stone to solidify. And so if the ancients were using skins, like animal skins or clay or beeswax, whatever it was, the logical solution is to leave a hole where the water can seep out. And when the water goes out, some of that gooey mixture comes out too, a little bit, right? And then you can possibly clear it out, or, then you take off the mold, whatever you were using for it, and you've got the solidified rock with a little protrusion of where the water was seeping out. Such an elegant explanation. Oh my God. And I don't have much more to add on that portion. So, let me be very clear. I'm not saying aliens built Machu Picchu, obviously. I'm not saying the Inca were incapable. I'm not saying every stone in Peru was artificial. I'm not saying every ancient site in the world used the same method. And I'm not saying my backyard experiment proves anything by itself. What I'm saying is this: the visible difference between refined megalithic walls and rougher stone structures deserve a better explanation than elite versus common. The reuse of older foundations is normal human behavior. The molded sandy gray character of some stones is worth investigating. Marcel Faudi's theory may not explain everything, but it may explain a lot. And the only way to know it is to test. Not mock, not repeat, not call people grifters, just test. For me, Machu Picchu changed something. It made me realize that the greatest mystery is not always the stone. Sometimes the greatest mystery is the human mind. How do people stand in front of two totally different building methods and pretend they're basically the same? How do people see smooth megaliths beside rough stone walls and stop asking questions? How do we become so afraid of being wrong that we refuse to notice what is obvious? I think we need to trust ourselves more. Not blindly, not arrogantly, but honestly. Seek the truth. Your eyes are allowed to send information to your brain before the guide finishes the memorized speech. And your brain is allowed to say, wait a second, that is not ignorance, that is curiosity. And curiosity is where all real history begins. So here's my challenge. Next time you see Machu Picchu, Cusco, Ollantaytambo, or any ancient stone site, do not start with the explanation. Start with a stone. Look at the surface. Look at the seams. Look at the nubs. Look at the broken edges. Look at the imprints. Look at what is above. Look at what is below. Ask what was built first. Ask what was reused. Ask what could be carved, what could be molded, what could be tested, because the stones do not care what we believe. They just sit there, waiting for someone to stop repeating and start seeing. This is Ancient Stone Secret. Subscribe if you want more investigations into ancient stone, lost methods, and the clues hiding in plain sight. Thanks.